Hello, pleasure to be with you again. This is my fourth video today. I felt like I was just in a video mood, trying to knock these out before I move in a month. I think I've got a fighting chance at it. I'm Tomlin's Nyback. This is 365 days toward racial change. Thanks for hanging out with me again here. We're in day 338. 338, 27 or more to go. Please do me a favor, go back and check out video day 199. I was able to put that back up. Should be up by time you hit this if you've been kind of going sequentially with me through this. We're here talking about black issues in America, how white people get along, how black people get along, politics, health, economics, social status, vocation. I'm struggling. I had this. I was kind of looking for work, but I've been making money writing, and so I'm kind of on the cusp between blue collar work, keep working for somebody who's never going to fulfill my desires, what I really wanted to do, versus being independent, believing in myself. So I got this guy, Craigslist. I want to drive and stuff, but he's being a little flaky, right? And I don't know, I just need to make the commitment to do my thing, put my trust into doing my thing, because nobody's going to do it for me what I want. I want a big house, a big building. I'm going to marry a beautiful woman, have a bunch of kids. Each kid has their own room, and know what it's like to experience America the way the power group advertises it. It's possible for black folks. But I think it's just never going to work. It's just never going to happen as long as I keep selling my labor, giving my power to the power group. I've got to be more independent. So this guy may or may not call. I don't care. I know roughly how much I need to make a day to kind of get along. So I'm not worried about it too much. So just some things I presented myself. If I'm wise, energetic, dedicated, things will come to fruition. I'll keep you updated in the next couple days. See what kind of decision I've made. I'm inspired to do this work by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. Him, and there's a lot of other men and women around the internet who articulates issues pertaining to their group much better than I can, about black people. I'm very new to the nuts and bolts of the conversation, the history, how the power group employs its strategies against black people. And I'm sure there are other groups in America can have similar arguments. Right now, the Navajo Nation, I live kind of near them relatively, and they're going through issues with the virus, right? The Navajo Nation, important historically for this country. All the Native Americans have a kind of a sad history and a relationship with America, but the Navajos, their language was just unbreakable, and so they were very influential in World War One, I believe, or World War Two, about being code talkers and everything. And it's interesting. This nation is it's messed up in that way that boy, when it comes to a fight and it's time for sacrifice, boy, they'll call you right up in a hurry. We're in this together, and and come and and we come running. Blacks, Native Americans, Japanese, all the groups, um, because of the allegiance to the nation. But then you sacrifice, go over there, wherever, and sacrifice, and then you come back and the nation is resistant to enacting full inclusion in the landscape. That's just not right. I always have a sense of when in a relationship with somebody, I'm gonna I'm going to demand some integrity, but I'm also going to keep in mind that I have a relationship with this person, and that means something, right? So, so America, you know, as this nation has its discourse with various groups, right? I'm flying the black banner over here because the the relationship between America and black people is still not, that's not a done deal. The conversation is ongoing, right? So that needs to continue to happen. And we need to get around this idea that bureaucracy plays a role, and we need to take it to committees and take it up to um, different hearings to find out why black people, like it's amazing to me. I'm watching the news and they're like, oh boy, black people are being disproportionately affected by the virus. It's like, no shit. We're down here at the bottom. We're up the socioeconomic ladder, being creative and doing what we can just to make the ends meet. While the overarching group in general, boy, they've got surplus, their ends meet, live in clean communities, their neighborhoods are spotless, they've got nature around them. Yeah, I wonder why black people are disproportionately affected by the virus. Oh, let me get back on point before I lose my time here. Back to Dr. Claude Anderson. Him and other people talk much better about this stuff. Get these books, please, so you know I'm not lying to you about what he's talking about. A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice, and Dr. Anderson's National Plan to Empower Black America. You can find Dr. Anderson at powernomics.com. He's all over the internet as well. He's here on YouTube. Check him out. Good guy. Behind me, you see the hashtag #US2 symbol. You'll find black women having their communities support one another. Check out Black Enough, BLAGGENUF. I have a Black Facebook experience. If you've got an entrepreneurial mind, go see Dr. Boyce Watkins at the Black Business School, theblackbusinessschool.com for your tax needs if you're really concerned and interested in that. Tyrone Gregory, self-employed tax guy, has product services. I talked to him on the phone. He's a real good guy. I'm this close to hooking up with him again. And speaking of money, if you want to understand America, how America's money, global economies, the Federal Reserve, G. Edward Griffin's book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, give you a lot of information. Today we are I'm going to do a little quick review of Uncle Tom's Cabin. Harriet Beecher Stowe's fictional account of slave life in America, but it's informed by real events. And going to just read a little portion today. I don't often read from textbooks, but we're going to talk about, just talk about it Uncle Tom's Cabin. He just dropped in here randomly. We've gone through this whole book in this project, and you can find them in the whole series sprinkled through the series. If you have the book, well, if you have this particular edition, we're on page 130. But we're as a Mr. Haley has just purchased Tom, and they're taking him. He's taking him south, kind of down the river, and so. But on the way, Mr. Haley has made certain stops at ports, and he's trading, picking up more slaves, and all that. He's doing his commerce. That's his business. That's his trade. To sell human flesh and whatnot. And before I get to what's read, there's just a little bit before this. If you're really familiar with the text, we're at the part of the slave auction, and there's a slave mother there with her child, her last son, and family units were not sacred. Black family units were not sacred in slavery times. So your offspring represents untold profit. You got it's like breeding cattle, horses, pigs, right? You get a fruitful animal. That's all profit, right? If that animal's going to grow, be profitable, and whatnot. It's not like going to the market and buying. So this woman has had her children auctioned off, sold off. She has born children, and this unfortunately is the plight for a lot of men and women, um, because slave masters, they saw commodity. They did not see sacred family union with Christian values. And these are all things taught to the slave and all that, but things that the slave can't implement. And that's what's another frustrating thing about being black in America, is that you see the privileged folks operating, um, moving about in and out the system, up and down, um, uh, aspects of privilege. Yet, I know it's been my experience, I'll say this, to reach out, to engage in the same kind of discourse economically, socially, politically, and get the returns being so minimal, anemic. That's very frustrating. So the family, the slave lived anticipating disappointment, knowing that they come from probably a broken up home, because they were sold, or their kin were sold, right? Slave masters often had the virgin slave women, so there's that offspring happening, right? And then there's the slave that did have a marriage and a family unit, that could get broken up just as easily. You send slave, and the slave could be uh, sold at any point during work, at night, sometimes covertly when people are away and the slave is kind of isolated. Suddenly the slave is sold. Things like that are happening in this time. So anyway, this woman is there she's there with her last son, and she's lamenting that she's had all her sons sold off, but now she is in the slave market with her son. They're about to be sold, and she's praying to God and hoping, right? And the thing in this book, and Harriet Beecher Stowe's book, it's a lot about the slave masters getting caught up in gambling debt, which is how Tom got caught up in this thing. His gambling debt, the gambling debts of his master were overwhelming. So the slave master had to sell off some slaves, and Tom was kind of a cream of the crop and brought a high price to counter some of these debts that his master had incurred. So of course the mother does not the relationship between the mother and her son does not survive. The son is sold, and she actually has to be restrained because she's trying to hold on. This is her last child. She's obviously not going to have any more. She's past bearing age. Men aren't interested in her, anymore. So she recognizes this opportunity is fleeting now that her last son is being sold off. And there's no communication, no holler back. Harriet Stowe's book kind of tries to intimate that there's communication, long distance communication, but that had to be spotty at best. It's not like your brother or sister, loved one gets sold off, and you're on either side of the United States and you have consistent communication with one another. That's not what's happening. That's not what's going on here. And it's a sad scene, right? But it's an all too common scene in the days of slavery because the family unit is just not sacred. Her heart's broken. The white folks just, the men are restraining her, with the idea that she'll get over it. Remember, black people, the power group treated black people as they are just an ignorant commodity, like horses and cows and pigs and dogs, just having litters, and you take the litter and they get over it eventually. Well, that's how they felt about black people. That being black was an existence that lacked any value in the world, as though we were so without attachments to family, mothers, siblings, offspring, that we had a minimal interest in those kind of relationships and whatnot. It had to be extra confusing with a white power group talking about marriage and the sacred marriage and all this celibacy, all this religion, all this kind of religiosity about that, but then selling you off right quick. It's the same thing that happened to me, kind of at my job. Felt, they really pumped me up with allowing me to think I have a voice, that I'm part of, that I'm important in the system and all that. Yet when they screw up and I voice my opinion, try to bring correction and try to remedy a potentially dangerous situation, I'm beaten down and I'm yelled at and I'm excluded. That's hard to take. I think I've learned my lesson now, and I've got to look for some other things now. Her son is sold to Mr. Haley. Out comes the handcuffs, and Harriet Beecher Stowe mentions Haley's handcuffs a lot. They're probably some well-worn heavy things, um, because there's an element of his trade, kind of, like I've done a lot of blue collar stuff, so I know about implements, gloves, mask, earplugs, helmet. You know how to gear up. So these handcuffs of Mr. Haley's are as part of his gear, um, for keeping his uh, slaves confined. So he's up and down the Ohio River, trading and selling. Not just slaves either. It mentions he's going to trade some goods, and he's got a whole list of things to do on his way out. Same way, I used to drive big trucks, right? So I used to have a trailer full of items and go across country or across the state, making my stops on the way and all. But that was under somebody else's banner, not my own business or anything like that. Slaves are stored below, like with the cargo, like cargo. They're cargo. They're commodities. They are, they're not on a nice boat ride up and down the Mississippi or the whole Ohio River or anything like that. No, they're storage and the commodities with the animals and um, the feed and the cotton, right? That was their place. Uh, but up on deck and above deck were the white people. Now, they were on vacations and cruises and had access to the bar and food and things like that, and enjoying the ride up there. Let me read you a little bit about John. Um, on this note about families being separated and torn apart at whim and will and stuff. This is John speaking. He says, "I've got a wife." Um, and Harriet Beecher Stowe designates this guy as John, aged 30. Right? That's he's either got some kind of plaque or sign on him. It says, and he laid his chained hand on Tom's knee. And John says, and she don't know a word about this, poor girl, right? So he's been scooped up. Let me go on a little bit. Tom says, where does she live? And John says, in a tavern a piece down here. I wish now I could see her once more in this world. And Harriet Beecher Stowe writes, poor John. It was rather natural, and the tears that fell as he spoke came as naturally as if he had been a white man. Tom drew a long breath from a sore heart and tried in his poor way to comfort him. And what it was now, apparently John and his wife were married, but they were separated, just like George and his wife, if you remember, at the beginning of our story here, Eliza were married, but they lived on separate plantations. Eliza and little George lived with the Shelbys, and Big George lived with a very cool slave master on another plantation, but they were able to travel and see each other occasionally. Well, this apparently is John's situation, but like I said, the slave could be sold at any time, no notice. There's no going away party, right? In the beginning of Uncle Tom's Cabin, Tom does have a party, and people know he's going away, and he's fully submissive in that. Apparently, John's been just sold uh, offhand and out of order. There's no goodbyes, no separations, no divorce. His wife could very well be ordered, commanded to marry another guy, maybe have kids. This guy, John, may be ordered and commanded to go into another wife, maybe have kids. This is Tom's fate as well, uh, wrapped up in the system to be coerced, ordered, commanded to be with another woman. There is no marriage. And Tom is married. Actually, Tom is very much committed to his wife back on the Shelby plantation as well. But the white folks, the power group did not see marriage as sacred. There was no need to get divorced and do paperwork and stuff like that. The marriage was like playing house for in the mind of the white folks in the days of slavery. You could jump the broom, be committed, and have all the appearances of a married couple, but it did not have, that bond was not stronger than the will of the white slave masters. So John's heartbroken. He has, slaves had so little to hold on to in the world, and so little um, to think that they could cherish and own. Right? There's no ownership for the slave. But there's still the feelings attached. To think of something in the world that could be possessed by the slave is it's something highly desired. A patch of ground to have a garden, maybe an animal, to sleep with and have, um, wife, children, right? These were things that the power group gave lip service to and did not respect as being in control of a black slave. That it was okay to fool around with and smile about until the needs of the power group became greater than the desire and will of black folks. Right? This small portion in Harriet's book here, she cuts to the white people, mostly the white women in the upper decks there of the boat, talking eloquently about slavery and stuff like that. And a theme that runs through Harriet's book is kind of the debate on whether or not slavery is appropriate for black folks. And there's actually good arguments for both sides. On one hand, morally, no. Well, I shouldn't just say it flat like that. There's a sense, I'll just say no, slavery's not right anytime for anyone, in any way. But then there's also in America, it's kind of appropriate because it's like having your dogs and your domestic animals safely tucked away. Because, if you let your dog out, is the dog going to go get a job sign a lease for an apartment or buy a house. No, the dog is much safer confined on a leash. So there's that argument as well. So yeah, we're going to revisit Uncle Tom's Cabin here a little bit. Hopefully, another one or two times. I don't know. We'll just wind it down. We'll see. But we'll definitely check in on old Tom again before this project is through. Remember to check out day 199, please. I had to redo that one. Some good stuff back there as well. I'm Tomlin's Nyback. That's day 338 out of the way. 365 days towards racial change. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.